All right, we have been watching the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, and it's been riveting the entire day. You're watching The Five, and great to have everybody here. Judge Janine, Geraldo, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. Let's go to the judge and get your take.
Well, I was just checking how long after the two murders and the one assault or attempted murder, the charges were filed. Because this video, the drone, and all of the other information that's been brought together took a while to put together. But this DA charged Rittenhouse within 48 hours. So the DA never really looked into whether or not there was a possibility of self-defense. He just immediately indicted him. And what you're seeing today is a DA who was reacting to the whole scenario of what we were doing in a post-George Floyd world, in an area where Jacob Blake had just been shot. You've got a young guy who was a new CPR. He was a police explorer. He was some kind of fireman cadet. He was a good kid. He went there to clean up the graffiti on the buildings. He has exemplified on that witness stand what every defendant should learn to do, and that is to speak clearly, directly. He stops exactly where he should stop. He doesn't add any further information. He listens exquisitely to the questions, and there isn't even a need on the part of the defense attorney to object to this prosecutor who is so desperate, so out of control, that he's even got the judge going through the roof in that courtroom. The bottom line here is that this kid has established that when he shot Rosenbaum, the first victim, he was in fear for his own life. When he shot the second guy, Huber, he was in fear legitimately and reasonably of his own life. And when he shot Grosskreis, the third guy who didn't die, for which he's being charged with attempted murder, he had legitimate grounds for which to use deadly physical force. So now the question is whether or not the prosecutor can prove now, because the burden of proof has shifted beyond a reasonable doubt, that it was not self-defense. He can't do it. He can't.
Well, yesterday, Geraldo, you said that you thought that this trial might not even go to the point where you have the defendant take the witness stand, but he did, and perhaps that might have been the best thing that he could have done for himself?
It was something that I would not have recommended. Putting the defendant on the witness stand is always problematic. It's a toss of the dice. More bad things can happen than good. But this kid has stood his ground. This is a self-defense case. Did he reasonably believe that his life was in danger, and was the force he used to defend himself appropriate? And it just seems to me that the kid is dying. He's a dopey kid with a hero complex. He shouldn't have been there, shouldn't have had the AR-15 on the street and all the rest of it. But I think he walks. I tell you the truth. I don't see how they touch him on the murder cases, the most serious charges. The other one, what is it? Recklessly endangering. I think there's a reasonable possibility that, aside from the possession of the weapon as a minor, I think that Rittenhouse is going to go.
Go ahead, Judge.
Well, first of all, I don't think he's a dopey kid. Just because he isn't Mr. Cool from New York City doesn't make him a dopey kid. Okay, this kid practiced CPR, trained. He was a police explorer. He was a fire cadet.
17-year-old guy that takes his AR-15 to a neighboring state.
You know what? You don't know what it's like in that part of the country, and maybe you do.
I do. I live there.
You do. You live there, okay? It's a part of life for them. And you know what the charge is for possession of that weapon? 9 months, because he's under 18.
I think that's the only one they've got.
Let's not conflate the issues here. That's a good kid. That is the kind of kid who can grow up and have a moral core.
Jesse, earlier today, the defense did move and ask for a mistrial because of the prosecutor.
Prosecutor's a joke. Not only has he exhibited prosecutorial misconduct, he coached a witness to lie and got caught cold. I've never seen anything like this guy. It's now illegal to defend yourself. If someone is assaulting you, chasing you, grabbing your weapon, shooting firearms over your head, and then aiming a revolver at your skull, this prosecutor says you can't defend yourself. That is insane. This all started with Jacob Blake. The prosecutor's office, corrupt Democrat district attorneys release a falsely edited piece of footage to make it look like this was a cold-blooded racial execution attempt, when in fact, Blake was a bad guy who was a rapist and had a knife and was a danger to the police officers and those people in that car. That all didn't even come out till later, but at that point, that inflamed such hostility in the streets. This is a very tender moment. Remember, this is just after the situation we saw in Minneapolis. So all of a sudden, people start looting and rioting for 3 days. Millions of dollars in damage. Politicians basically told the police to stand down. They weren't doing anything to stop this. Unfortunately, some of these small business owners had to call in help. And this guy listened to the call. I agree. Shouldn't have had a gun. Probably shouldn't be there. But that's what happens when you treat police like garbage and politicians tell them not to defend law and order. All right? So he gets out there. Clear self-defense. Everybody that sees the footage knows that. What do? Media comes out and smears this guy as a white supremacist. Joe Biden comes out during the campaign, puts out a tweet linking Donald Trump, says white supremacy, with a picture of Rittenhouse with the AR. That's slander, straight up. And then this corrupt prosecutor goes out and throws a slew of nasty charges at this guy because he wants to run for DA. He's already run for DA once. This guy's got political aspirations. This is an axis of evil. This is prosecutors, the press, and politicians conspiring to create violence, create a deadly situation. And then when a deadly violent situation happens, they want a scalp of this kid. And that is really corrupt.
I just want to show that one thing. We have the sound from the judge scolding the prosecution, then we're going to go to Greg.
You reamed them.
I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to. Don't get brazen with me. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that.
So that happened earlier today, Greg. And then there is just another angle on this, and that is the media coverage at the time and since, and if there's any sort of revisiting of that.
Yeah. As Jesse pointed out, the media coverage of the Jacob Blake thing led to this in so many ways, because what they did was they excused the rampant violence, they cheered the reduction of police, and what did that do? It creates a void. Who fills that void? Well, sometimes thugs do, but other times well-meaning citizens who have had enough. That is a story that is old as time, that when there is no police, you become the policeman, hence the reason why you have cops. But I learned a lot from this prosecutor. Number one, you have to let someone beat you over the head with a skateboard. If you defend yourself, that's on you. You should never shoot a guy pointing a gun at you because he hasn't shot you yet. And remember that. He made that very clear. You know, he hasn't shot you yet. And when a guy comes at you with a gun up close, he probably won't shoot you because he could have shot you maybe 10 feet earlier. However, he probably would have had a better chance to kill you up close. But that never would have happened because he would have done it already. But the bottom line is somebody pointing a gun at you is not enough for self-defense. You must be shot first. The bottom line, and Jesse nailed it, Rittenhouse was doing a policeman's job because he could no longer rely on the state or the politicians to provide cover or protection for the police. The city was burning and going to hell unabated. So this kid, rightly or wrongly, acting probably on his own instincts, felt that he could help. I love Jeffrey Toobin's take today, where he says Rittenhouse is lucky that he's not on trial for being an idiot. And this is a guy who should...
Toobin?
Yeah, he should be really thinking about a concealed permit before going after Toobin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think that what you're going to see now is if the media deliberately blocks this information from coming out, and instead, because, for example, you never would have known that Gage had pointed the gun at this guy if you'd been following the media's coverage of this. Therefore, if he is acquitted, you're going to have the same thing where people go, oh, my God, white guy acquitted. He could do whatever he wants, even though he shot white people. Doesn't matter because our media is interested in the racial divide more than anything. They're going to make it about race. Rex Chapman already did it on Twitter. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have the activist class, egged on by the media, once again at CNN, saying, you know, it is time to scream and yell. And yes, restorative justice can take the shape of looting and arson. But that's because we are now in the business of misinforming the public to create conflict.
We have the montage that our team put together of some of the media coverage. If you could roll that for us, please.
To defend the actions of a 17-year-old man who killed 2 protesters, one of which was armed with a skateboard. And the last time I checked, I don't think a skateboard could kill someone.
A 17-year-old kid from out of state, a boy from out of state, drives up to the state with an AR-15 around his neck, shoots and kills a couple of people, shooting wildly, running around, acting like rent-a-cop.
And it's not good that a 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot
What's
people.
His name, this guy?
So the media continue, Hellman, the media continue to, I mean, basically bask in glory, I guess, is one of these things. As the judge goes forward with this request from the defense for a mistrial, is that a possibility?
You know, I don't think at this point the judge is going to grant the request for a mistrial, but I do have something to say about the judge and the way the judge acted in this case. The judge lost it, and he lost it for good reason. What you've got is the prosecution crossed the line that is as old as the Constitution, where you have a right to not incriminate yourself. And the prosecution is trying to make this kid someone who is not entitled to the right to remain silent. You know, from every TV show you ever watch, you have a right to remain silent. But this prosecutor is saying, this is the first time you talked about it since this thing happened, as if, therefore, you're not entitled to have the right to remain silent. And everyone in their mind, when they go into the jury room, is going to say, gee, I wonder, he had to think it all through and work it all through. That's a fundamental mistake by the prosecution. So when the judge says, why would you even do that? I can't figure out why you would do it. The prosecution wants to push a mistrial here because the prosecution knows they're losing. This kid is one of the best witnesses I've seen on the witness stand, without a doubt. He has an uncanny sense for what to say and when to stop.
Well, and he's fighting for his life. We're going to go back to the trial in just a moment. We're going one more comment from Geraldo and Jesse. Geraldo, you first.
The defense does not want a mistrial at this stage. The defense is winning. This is not a domestic terrorist. It is clear that the image that was built is built on false Legos. That this is a 17-year-old kid. Again, I go back, a dopey mistake, hero complex. I can save my community. I'm just like all those great people in Marvel comics.
that join the military.
Maybe
they're usually 17.
Maybe so. Maybe
they want to help. They want to help their society.
Understand that I am announcing that I believe he's going to be acquitted.
Yeah.
The prosecution missed the mark. The prosecution tried every dirty trick they possibly could. The facts don't work for the prosecution. The kid was reasonable in his use of force and deadly force, and that's what it's about.
Geraldo, don't you think that once the DA had the drone information, had the information from the witnesses, they should have at least offered a plea here? Because the DA jumped. In 48 hours, you indict in a case like this, you don't even know the facts in 48 hours. There should have been some recognition that this was a loser case.
I wonder at what point the defense knew that they were going to put the kid on. I want to know if they led the prosecution down the primrose path to then whack them with a kid that was impenetrable from the point of view of this lame prosecutor.
We've known for a long time that the drone video has been out there.
Whether the kid was going to testify. I didn't know the kid was going to testify.
Yeah, but we don't. Obviously, you don't have to tell anybody your kid. The kid's going to.
Let's get Jesse.
Go ahead, Jesse.
The montage we showed of the press, that was so sinister. They have lost control of information in America. They used to have total control. So they used to go out on TV and lie. You look at the headlines covering this story, it's almost like they're watching a different trial than the rest of the country. We have the internet now. We see all different angles of footage. We can actually watch testimony live. And they are trying to sell a lie to their audience. Because maybe their audience isn't watching, or maybe the audience wants to be lied to.
Can I say one
because
thing?
they're not interested in the truth.
One thing. We have to be careful not to be rooting for the kid. You know what I mean?
I'm rooting for justice,
yes,
Geraldo.
that's what.
And they should be rooting for that, too. Sometimes things go sideways from their narrative.
Right.
You move the narrative towards the truth, and they have not done that.
The kids shouldn't have been there, but they shouldn't have threatened him with their pistols. They shouldn't have whacked his head with the skateboard.
This is clear self-defense, Geraldo. Everybody knows that.
I am saying it is a reasonable use of force.
You know, it's funny. It's hard not to personalize this, but I keep thinking, like, okay, you know, they keep saying he went straight across state lines. It's actually pretty close to where he lives. It's where he works, right? It's where he works.
His father lives in Kenosha.
Yeah, so I'm thinking.
That trip
Got it. I know that. What I'm saying is, if I were 17 and my community was being destroyed,
right,
and I was there and I had these skills, and again, I'm 17 and I am an optimistic, hopeful person, and I'm watching my community be destroyed. Would I hide in my house? I don't know what I would do, but I would definitely be outside, and I would definitely go and see what I could do. I don't know if I would have a gun, because California, it's different, but I would have been there.
And for the most part, as he's testified and as witnesses have testified, he was putting out fires and delivering medical aid. That's what he was up to then.
That was the least believable part of his testimony.
No,
really?
Well,
because witnesses testified to the same thing.
They have videotape of him cleaning graffiti and witnesses saying that he applied medical aid to them.
And he explained, and he testified to that as well. We're going to just take a very quick break. We'll have more of the 5 coming right up.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.